Hey there, thanks for joining us at the Rabbit Hole of Research, where you'll learn a few facts that you can impress your friends with at a party.
Hey, welcome back to the Rabbit Hole of Research. We're down here in the basement studio. You have me, Joe.
You got Nick
We've
again.
got Nick.
Georgia.
We've got Georgia. And we have a special guest. Take it away.
Hey, it's Ben. Good to be back, or good to be here, you'll tell me in the middle of our time travel travails. Anyway, Ben Tanzer here from Chicago, author, fellow podcaster, college professor, low-key consultant dude. Honored to be a guest tonight and talk about one of my own books, because what could be more self-serving than that? So thank you all for having me. And I am going to repeat this in case we lost it before, but I am so jealous of that basement vibe, and we don't have a base vibe, so I'm excited about that. Appreciate it.
So when was the last time you read your own book? Do you read your own book?
I will read them after they come out, but I'm really not someone. It's funny. If I was an actor, I would absolutely watch my own movies for sure. My ego is both fragile and strong enough at the same breath. But no, I don't necessarily go back and read my own books, though one of the tensions is there's so many books to read. And I feel like you're going to waste time on your own book. Dude, no, I don't read them often, and I definitely haven't read this one in a while. So it's fun to revisit it with the three of you.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we're joking a little bit because we've had a few technical difficulties getting this episode started, all on the production side of it. So,
Man, that sound
I
guy.
still up whatever role I played in, let me tell you.
no need to apologize. It's
all Joe's fault.
it's a feel good.
I was blaming the imaginary sound tech.
You should, yes. We need to fire our production manager now. If anyone knows a good production manager, let us know.
So, Joe, do you have any lists that you want to go over?
Yeah. Why don't you introduce us to what is this?
Yeah, so we're going to be
episode?
talking about broken futures, trauma, and the human condition. And this is framed, as Ben had mentioned, around his novel, Orphans. And so I just wanted to lay the groundwork for kind of these words: broken futures, trauma, human condition, just so we're all grounded, and then we can get into our discussion. Again, future, I put together this kind of definition as a future where progress, technology, science, economics, paradoxically degrades human dignity, exacerbates trauma, and disintegrates social structure rather than uplifting humanity. So I mentioned trauma. Trauma is this emotional, physiological, psychological response to an event or series of events that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, leaving lasting effects on mental, emotional, and sometimes physical health. And trauma is when something happens to you and a part of you stays stuck there. And the human condition refers to the essential experiences, struggles, emotions, and existential realities that define human life, including birth, growth, conflict, love, work, suffering, and mortality. It's not just our biology or culture. It's a total experience of being human across time and place. The human condition is the beautiful, terrifying, and endless attempt to find meaning between birth and death.
Hold on, this could be a long episode.
Yes, and we're recording now. But yeah, I'm going to pause here because I do have a list, but I want to...
Oh, you also have a list.
I have a list too.
Wow.
I come prepared.
Oh my gosh.
Once
Yeah,
I hit the record
Georgia.
button, I have the definitions and a
But
list.
I think maybe we should hear a little backstory
Yeah, I think
about...
so. About Orphans and how I came to this episode and getting Ben to talk about an old book.
Not very old.
No, not so old. Anyway, yeah, there's like backstory.
He's a young man,
and then
but yeah.
I feel like a young man, though I don't know what that says about the young men I'm raising. They're really young then. But there is backstory and then a little extra backstory. The backstory to the backstory, and I don't know what you call that, backstory squared, is something I was talking briefly to you guys about. I had to go on a work trip. It was a big opportunity, but it was also something that was very important to my boss. And at the time, one of my kids was going through a hard time. And really, it was a terrible time to go away. Not that I didn't think my wife could handle it, not that she couldn't handle it, but the idea of leaving her to handle this by herself. And she's like, "Oh, man, you're cool." Okay. So I'm flying cross country and I have a layover out west and I call home just to check in and things were not going well. And I felt sick, honestly felt physically sick. It's funny, Joe, you talk about trauma and being stuck on something. That was traumatizing, that phone call. And I'm going to use all your keywords here.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank
my
you.
wife was like, yeah, right on. And my wife was just like, just go. And so there was this moment where I thought, should I have told my boss this isn't something I can go do? But I also realized I didn't feel like I could do that. But that was balanced out by what I recognized was my own ego and my own need to go do this thing I was asked to do, which was a big deal. And I realized it wasn't one or the other. It was a both. And I was embarrassed by that. I was embarrassed that I couldn't talk to my boss, and I was embarrassed that I still wanted this. So I was thinking a lot about that. And I was thinking this would make for an interesting sort of book, right? What does it mean to need to work, to want to work, to have work dictate decisions for you? And I've always been very work oriented and focused and striving. So I was carrying that idea around in my head. What does it mean to be someone who goes away, to travel, to leave your family, to prioritize work? And then I was out running one night late, and I was running along the lake, and I looked up, and I don't know what planet or star I saw, because this is where I'm very derelict in my larger education. But I looked up in the sky and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if this guy who's got this job that involves travel, what if he had to travel to Mars? Like, what if it was really a thing, not just fly to California like I did back and forth in 72 hours? What if it was a whole journey? And then I started thinking, wow, what if this was like Death of a Salesman meets the Martian Chronicles? What if you could somehow take these ideas? It's about work, but it's also about building a new universe or a new world. Could someone be, speaking about the human condition, could someone be caught somewhere in the middle of those things? And by the time I got home, I could really visualize a book that I had just been slowly noodling on for several weeks, right? A guy who puts work before his family, but he doesn't just go away for, say, 72 hours, right? It's going to take months to go back and forth to Mars, even if I'm...
It's about 9 months to get there, right? That's
right.
about
Thank you. So
the
even if
stuff.
I'm messing with what reality is, like it's 9 months, that seems crazy. Say I shortened it because it's the future. It still has to be 6 months or 3 months, whatever it has to be. It's not a short thing. And then I thought, wow, there's a whole book here. What would that look like? And why are we going to Mars? And it's funny, I don't consider myself any more prescient than anyone else, but authors sometimes have those moments. And one of my ideas, which is funny now, and I think it'll seem more clear why it's funny, is I thought, oh, this is rich people deciding to colonize Mars because they're done with the Earth, right? That seemed very real to me. Now, of course, rich people, Elon Musk in particular, talk about that all the time.
Yep.
I'm sure I heard that somewhere. I doubt it was an original idea, but it wasn't like a normal part of conversation. And I thought this would be really interesting. This guy who's never going to be rich, who's barely keeping it together, is helping sell this property on a planet that's not developed yet for rich people so they can abandon people like him and his family. Then I thought that's a fun conflict to mess with, right? So now you've got the conflict of how do we live on this Earth? That gets to the dystopia Joe was referring to. Why do we have to cater to the rich? And how do we support our families? Like, this guy does need to support his family. Could he do it back on Earth? Not clear. And then I just started playing that out. So whatever point you all are in the book, that's the path I wanted to follow. The torture and the human condition of, I need to do this, but do I really need to do this? Because that was my feeling. Did I really need to go do what I did? So this guy's a lot more extreme. He's going to Mars. But he's also, the situation's a lot more dire for him in terms of cash flow, and he owes people money. And so there's another dynamic. There's a sense of violence and dread over his shoulder all the time as well.
He's doing what he just needs to do what he needs to do to support his way of living. And
what I love about that, Nick, sorry not to cut you off, but what I love about that is that's absolutely true. And it still raises the question, is he absolutely is this the only thing he could do? Like, I frame it like that's how it feels for him. And I think that's important. But, right, he's doing what he has to do, but he's also choosing the most extreme way to do it. But we don't know.
Right.
I'm sure he thinks going to Mars, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. When I was reading it, I was picturing like, yeah, there could be other options, but for him, this is the option. Like, this is going to help get as much of his debt paid so he can keep surviving. I don't know if that was where you were going with it. And Clearly, now I can
absolutely.
ask
No,
you.
I really
like,
wanted it to feel. Yeah, I wanted it to feel desperate. Also, it's interesting
Right.
to me as a writer, as a thinker, as a fellow podcaster. Like desperation takes on so many shapes and forms, and there's so many layers, right? Like I had a gig. Again, that's what prompted this. I was desperate for it to go well, but my family's livelihood didn't depend on it. On the other hand, I didn't want to deal with my boss. So
Right.
I
Right.
felt
Yeah.
slightly desperate, but I also
Right.
felt desperate with the feeling of, man, are you deserting your family? And I really didn't want that feeling. But that's also my own guilt and shame. And again, my family was fine. That's the other thing, right? My family was fine. I just thought you're
everyone
abandoning
survived.
them. Everyone survived. Not only did everyone survive, but they're still all in the same apartment I left them in all those years ago. Everybody lives at home again. So I know it worked out.
I want to frame it a little bit, and if your story kind of takes us bent, but the little sci-fi kind of thing, especially as we barrel towards AI, robot automation, and then maybe future thinking and getting in the realm of hand wavium, cloning, and replacements. And that was where they had the list of things to talk in this world, because not only maybe in this future world you have to do what's best for your family, and maybe that's off world, but like when during World War II, when the men went to the front lines, people had to backfill in and take jobs. So what if the backfill, or the reason you can't get a good paying job here on Earth is because machines have taken those, and or clones can replace you also.
Yeah, that's that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go for it. That's
Yeah,
where-
no, I was definitely playing with that as well,
Yeah.
right? They have, even though they're borderline, I don't think they're poverty stricken, they're working class, their apartment's still automated. There's
Right,
still a
right,
robot
right.
vibe that takes care of things. And there are robots all over town because, again, you get to cut down on the workforce. The other thing
That's
I was
right.
really interested in around class issues and work was that it's not just there's no middle class, there's almost no jobs that exist in the middle, right? You're either
right.
rich and running
Or you're
things
just poor.
or you're poor. And I
Yeah.
thought that is where the country, this felt like this 10 years ago to me. That's where the country's
It's
heading.
headed.
Last night, I got home really late from class and I almost got run down by some mechanized delivery thing. I don't even know what you call those. It was zipping down the sidewalk
Did it
like
look like
25
it?
miles an hour.
Oh, did it look? Were you walking and then it went by you?
It looked like a little
Yes.
rover.
Yeah.
With
Does
that,
it
yeah.
look like an ice box or a cooler?
Yes.
On wheels, yep. Yeah,
Like
they
a
have those down at
robot
Purdue.
cooler.
Yeah, so,
So
this
that
is,
means somewhere in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
some delivery person did not get that gig.
Did
So
not.
it struck me that this is an interesting disparity to explore. And then I don't know if you were alluding to this, Joe, but the other thing that adds a level of tension for me in the book is that the guy, when they send you away, they clone you temporarily.
Right.
So not only are, your family not missing, and it plays into my sitting in this airport, they not only don't miss you on a personal level, anything you would have done to support
be
the
gone.
family, some version of
that's-
you is doing that.
And that was that Twilight Zone episode?
No, remember was that Black Mirror?
Was that a Black Mirror one?
Yeah, like
you're right.
more
Black Mirror. That's
recently,
right. Yep.
there was the one where, did you see the episode
No.
where they're in space together, but then was it a robot?
Yeah, they had
It
these
was
clones
a robotic
Yeah.
version of themselves still at home.
at home doing all the home stuff, and then they could download themselves into the clone.
robot.
and
I
then
feel
do
like that just
whatever.
makes it all more
And so-
expensive. No,
Well, I guess it depends on what you're doing in space, right? Or what, like
That was
it-
a really, really good Black Mirror
it,
episode.
that was
There-
right. They have that future technology bent to them, but you have that feeling there because you get into some interesting questions that in this zone. What is it? We think about that human condition. What's it mean to love? Right now, if you go off
Absolutely.
and you now have a clone take your spot, or in this Black Mirror where that happened also, do you become?
Well,
Can you fall in love with the clone? And does the clone have agency?
well, okay, I
at
need
some
to
level?
make some sort of distinction. Now, a clone is an actual human being that just has the exact same genetic makeup.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
So how I guess I'm trying to picture how that works because
So I don't know how Ben, or well, let's not pick on Ben, but in the story.
Ben, let's pick on you.
Oh, no, pick on Ben. Ben's totally with
Yeah, I
that.
guess you're here. Yeah. But how is the cloning performed? Because Georgia's, so a clone in particular is just a genetic copy of the original. the problem with cloning, in a way it's usually portrayed, and we did the cloning episode last season, is that the base memories of the original aren't also necessarily uploaded. So you have nature versus nurture kind of thing. Right. So the clone, and how do you get an adult
clone? And also
clone?
the clone has to then go from they're a baby and they have to go to be an adult. So obviously in this situation that's not plausible probably to wait till the person. So the clone actually is like a copy that just happens at the time they need it.
I'm so lost on this question.
How's the cloning work now? You got to explain all the science in full detail.
Did I mention to you guys that I was an English major and then I went to social work school or grad school? And so, my science skills are slim. But the way I envisioned it was certainly that they bring you into the lab and they're creating a version of you that's good for 6 months or more. And actually, to your point, I'm glad you brought this up because I remember being conscious about it. Whether I pulled it off, I'm going to leave to the experts in the room. But they're using your DNA to create a copy. Right. That's a genetic similarity. That's not the word I want, but genetically similar and not able necessarily to tell apart. Though I think part of the vibe is that it's a clone because there's something missing in terms of the sort of energy or heat or whatever your significant other, whatever vibe they give off, you can tell the difference. But in my case, I thought it was important that they also downloaded your memories so that the clone isn't necessarily looking to literally, but this is an interesting question, replace the person, but they can be available to offer solace and conversation and nostalgia. The question about love is fascinating because what I thought would be interesting is less that the significant other might fall in love with the clone, but that at a certain point, things just start to blur. That it was less about falling in love and forgetting that there's a difference. That I thought seemed possible to me if you felt abandoned, if you were isolated, and then this identical version is just
we also think about you were thinking about the spouse or the partner, but if you have children that are younger, they may not know the original at all and become totally in love with this replacement parent.
And then when you come back, like you don't have those memories with your child.
Yep.
You're like,
are the memories back uploaded? Do they go, all right, from January 2028 when you left for Mars, your clone now, we're going to give you all the memories that they had. And when you came back 5 years later,
we don't want to ask every specific question about the book because we got to read the book.
Maybe this isn't in the book. I don't.
Well, but
he can say no spoilers and let's move along. I answered this in the book.
No, spoilers is good, but I honestly, I say this with affection. You all are going as far as I thought about it, but there's definitely steps beyond. What's interesting, like with the children, one thing I thought about, which I love that you brought up children, is that one of the strengths of the clone, and clearly I was projecting here, is that the clone actually can be calmer and more patient than maybe we can be as a parent. That one of the things you're building in is the importance of a clone bringing sort of peace and equanimity to the house, because again, you've already had this person stripped away. So the goal of the corporation who the protagonist goes to work for, they need to keep people happy and they need to keep the people at home happy. So part of my sense was, and again, my own projection, I was a parent of small kids, and I was a terrible parent, that these people would also have more patience, which is also nice for a significant other. They can be calmer. So I had this idea they would be better versions of us.
Okay. And then also, so the person's away at Mars doing their job and this clone is at home. They don't need to go to work because
that's right.
Because the other person. So then are they just at home all the time, like being like almost like a stay-at-home dad or whatever, or mom, or however this? I'm just saying dad because we were talking about it being a man.
Yeah.
But then that makes a huge difference if all of a sudden your only thing is to replace that person and be at home all the time and not having to
go to... They actually just hide out in the closet.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just curious. And then I don't expect you to answer.
Whatever the in-between place is. Not quite hiding out, but not going to work either. Cleaning the house, chilling out.
Then you go hang out at the cafe.
Watching Arrested Development.
So I was going to...
And I still have one more question about the clone. I'm sorry.
One more question.
This is just fascinating to me.
Let's figure it out.
Is the clone a human being? Is the clone... Like, then
That's
after
different, right?
After these 6
Right,
months, do they just like disintegrate?
That's what I'm saying. What's their agency?
Like, and is it a human?
Right.
I mean,
Is it a human?
They would be
just take
human,
them out
right?
back.
I mean, if you
Right?
clone,
Can they be killed?
if you clone a sheep, right, it's still a sheep. Or if
Right.
you have a pet and you go to clone it and it's a dog, it's still, we consider
It's
a
still
dog.
a
So
dog.
if you take a human and you clone it, this becomes the ethics, and this is bioethics 101 here, is that if you clone a human, then that human should have the agency and the rights of its fellow people, right? And that's what you would do. So yes, it is a human, and then you would have to make the parameters. So if you had a disposable human, then that would be, everyone agreed upon that. And in Ben's scenario, if you had a rich class and a poor, and they just want the poor people to go do their bidding, then they might either A, give the clone some rights that they can then go off and be a poor person and join the poor people group, or they just go, you know what, this clone will die, and it has
It's
some.
like a self. That totally is ringing these bells, which I'm bringing
You
it
can
to. I
ring
cannot.
my bell,
I can't bring it actually
We're gonna
into
get
my
sued for
mind.
that, don't.
But there's a story we watched, where they made a clone because the person was going to have like terminal illness and die.
Oh,
And then they
right,
made
yeah.
like a clone, but then
Yes.
that person ended up living, but then
Yes.
everybody liked the
The
clone,
clone, right?
better.
Yeah, that's right.
That
But
has to be harsh. Like,
Yes,
I don't-
that
I
does
don't-
have to be.
I don't.
That's in Ben's kind of scenario. The
Yeah.
clone is actually much more likable, maybe. If you're
If
a
you're-
hole and
Yeah.
you go off and the clone's like lovable and
Right.
a joy to be around, you might go, you know what? You can stay on Mars and keep sending the paycheck because we got the sugar daddy in the closet over here. And we're just going,
So now I'm going to be very interested when one of you reaches the end of the book, and you can tell me what you think of the conclusion, because this does play into the
Yeah.
ending of the book, for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Yeah.
It also raises this question. You guys are all both saying it and dancing around it, not dancing around it like in a cryptic way, but not knowing the answer. And so I don't know the answer either. But one of the things I was so intrigued by is how ultimately replaceable is everyone? And again,
Yes.
when you
Yes.
filter it through the lens of work, and I spend a ton of time thinking about work anyway, in a way, if you're not the boss, you're not the owner, then everybody's expendable. And one of the things, I'll do my own callback, which is very self-serving. This particular boss I had, who I really liked, I want to add that, if that may be unnecessary. He's not going to listen to this probably, but other people will. He won't for sure. I'm sure he's never heard a podcast. We're all expendable. And
right.
there is a part
yeah.
where you want to turn down a job. And again, this was a pretty big job I had at the time. I worked in the nonprofit universe. Let's not confuse it with working at like Coca-Cola or something. There was always this sense, well, I could be replaced anytime. It doesn't matter that I have a certain knowledge base now or institutional memory, or there are people around the country who consider me to be the expert in this area or that area. If the boss decides, you're done. And so I also wanted to play with that sense that we're all expendable. So in this story, certainly the replacements for the people traveling are considered expendable until, meaning we don't know how long they're going to go necessarily. But the idea is when the person comes home, the clone is done. And they will move the clone into some other job.
I was going to say
right?
also, if the person that goes to the Mars,
wouldn't it be cheaper for the
dies.
company to just not send them back and have it crash?
Yeah, or right. You don't have
Like-
to even deal with it. You go, oh, they died on Mars, and sorry. And they just keep working on Mars. And I think this gets into, as we're talking, thinking about, you start to blur the line of into slavery, right? You go from poor with agency to no agency, and almost like the clones and the person sent to Mars, I guess they're getting a paycheck at some level, but you begin to, if you don't have rights,
But even the company could own that spot.
Right,
So
yeah.
they're
So,
not
right.
paying anyone. They're
Right, that's right. That's
paying
right.
themselves. All right, cool.
It's like when you go, oh, you get $10, but you got to pay $9.50 to rent the apartment you live in.
The company
so,
man.
right, so really, and then it's 50 cents to get your feeds, and then it's another 20 cents for clothes. So you're actually owe me another hour of work. So I think you do get into these really interesting class
Based out of history that, has already...
human history, that humans aren't good stewards of labor and money and economics. Like
or pretty much
you know,
anything. But
no.
anyway.
Let's go with your trauma, Georgia. What trauma do you have with this one?
But I want to ask, are most of the stories that you write science fiction, or was this something different for you? Do you know what I mean?
That's a great question. No, this is definitely something different. I had a moment when I was on this run. I wasn't planning on writing something science fiction, but when I looked up and saw, and I was a voracious science fiction reader all through childhood, high school, college. Maybe I've slowed down in adulthood, but it was a genre I was completely wrapped up in. But this is also the first thing that I thought, let's try to double down and make this science fiction. Like, what? And again, we have authors here. I'm not the only one. You start thinking about your own work. I know I was at the time. And I thought, okay, how do I do a thing I believe I do well, but bring some new wrinkle to it, right? Or wrap it in a new layer. And maybe, and again, some of this was excitement and some of this is the desire to create cool stuff, which I'm always trying to do. And things people enjoy and react to it. We can have conversations like this. To me, this is a very peak reason I would try to write that kind of book, because then I get to talk to the three of you and I don't have all those answers, right? I thought about them and took copious notes and whatever. But no, so that was the first time I tried that. I felt like in that case, when I don't usually traffic very much in inspiration, I think about the writing like work. Like today we sit down, we get back to work, we're on this thing. But that time it really hit me like, let's make this not feel science fiction. Let's remove ourselves from this planet and start building something else. And so it became science fiction. And I'm thrilled because, again, I was an
it feels
really cool.
so human too. Like it feels
good.
like
I'm so happy to hear that.
Like as I said, it was the entire time I've been reading. I'm like, oh, this story doesn't have to take place here. It could take place anywhere.
Yeah.
So the universal human.
Yeah, exactly. It's a human story that's made sci-fi.
Right. And I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm not into sci-fi because it's this or that. Right. And I think, no, I think it can be a very approachable, relatable thing.
It's covering something that is very social forward, being like, okay, we're going to make this easily digestible. Not saying that it's easy
to... I think
to
create something interesting that's digestible would be awesome to me. I think that's...
I just didn't know if I was going to be like, oh man, I'm just insulted.
No. I think when a lot of people say, I write in the speculative sci-fi genre mostly, but I think when people go, I don't like sci-fi, I think they're thinking of hard sci-fi, and that gets bogged down. It's like fantasy. There are fantasy novels that get bogged down into explaining, and I don't want to get in any trouble, different classes of fairies and trolls, and there's pages and pages of that, and the story kind of seems to slow down. There's people that really enjoy that.
With all the lore.
I think it's science fiction that moves. It's character-driven, plot-driven, and the science is sprinkled in there, either in a very loose way, very hand-wavian way, where it's just a lab, DNA, clone, boom, I'm done, or... myself, I try to go a little bit more into it, but very like the conversational, very bring it down and fit it in, weave it into the dialogue and through the narrative to have the world building happen. And I think someone who had big ideas, and it was interesting, Ben, as you said you were a reader of sci-fi back in the day, and talking, I just thought about Isaac Asimov and his robot series, that was the crux of it, these big ideas. And the science was in there, but the big idea was that besides a detective and their adventures, but it was more the society was this kind of place where we had the classes and the machines had taken over a lot of jobs. And so people were very had this Luddite kind of attitude towards the robots that were replacing them. And then the robots seemed to gain sentience, right, at some level. And it was like, how do we control this thing? And that's going to replace us potentially, our homes and our lives. And so that was really interesting there. This kind of the classic example of this kind of dynamic that you are exploring. So I tethered back, fast forward a little bit, maybe early 80s, Blade Runner, the disposable kind of worker, disposable. And I was thinking, what if your story reversed, that you got cloned? And then your clone went off with no agency, so you got paid maybe some sum. Oh, Ben, he's really good at X, Y, and Z. Hey, Ben, can we clone you for $100K? And then we're going to send your clone off. And then your clone now has this no one's written this story. I'm gonna write it.
Hey, yo, this story needs to be
okay,
written.
you know what? Never mind.
You are speaking, these whole series of comments speak to what I tend to circle back to, whether it's conscious or not. You mentioned the human condition. The most basic thing in anything I write is trying to understand how any of us exist day to day, how we cope. That somehow, to me, the quotidian stuff, going to buy groceries or fighting with your kid or taking your significant other to the doctor, that those are equally important. They're important if you can figure out how to talk about them, that how we work and how we're denied work and how we deny ourselves things, and that this all plays out. And then in this story, I just thought there's this sci-fi element, right? I'm going to still try to do what if hopefully well, but can you tell it through this different lens? So that was really conscious. And it's only recently that I had another idea that is in that lens. And so I've been pursuing that. And it's interesting early on, and I'd never had this reaction before. I thought, oh, I've got a sequel for this book. And it looked like it was going to go forward. And then that fell apart for a variety of reasons. So I shelved it. And then over the pandemic, I pulled it off the shelf, though obviously it's a metaphorical shelf. It was sitting in a file.
We get it.
But I started thinking, okay, that sequel thing is not going to happen. But there's some interesting ideas here.
Right.
So
Right.
it's only after 10 years that I'm working in that potentially. We'll have to see if somebody wants the book, like in that genre again. But I always do come back to work and coping and thinking. And yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was going to ask. So, as far as bringing in the science fiction, how did you approach that, since that's not something that you typically write in? Did you have to do a lot of research, or?
So that's an awesome question, because I probably should have done more research. What I did, in essence, cheated a little bit.
You can call your friends now, like at the Rabbit Hole of Research.
So it's funny, yes, trust me, I'll be leveraging this relationship next. You all are stuck with me indefinitely.
And I think by that, Joe means himself. Okay, because I don't think Nick and I can help you. Can we help
I got my
take
doctorate.
advantage of Joe's big brain
in
going
the science
forward?
part? We can help you in the human condition part.
The human
Trauma, I got you.
Nick's got you with coffee. He'll keep you coffeeed up.
All right, Joe, you are now officially a consultant. But what I did do, and again, I'm always doing low-key research. If I have an idea, especially like with a sci-fi book or you're thinking forward, I'll look something, I'll have the idea first, then I'll look it up and see how reasonable it is. Has anyone ever talked about that? If I had to back it up, could I do, like you said, it's going to take 9 months to get to Mars. So I looked that up at the time. I don't remember what I looked up, but I thought, okay, but what I really did, which is such a cheat, is that when I was excited about an early draft, I sent it to a friend of mine who's a science fiction writer. And I was like, just tell me where I've got it wrong. And that was a really interesting lunch, because he was also at the time working for a sci-fi publisher. And so I was semi-pitching him, semi-picking his brain, but I really wanted him to react to things. It's funny, because he did react to whatever I had written down for how quickly you could get to Mars, and he's just F no. Whatever I said at the time, and he gave me a number like 9 months, and I thought, okay, is this future enough where I can cheat and make it 3 to 6 months? So I was playing with all that, but I really had him run me through the ringer. What do you think, as a published guy, human, where am I so far off base? So I was really interested in that.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you, but Georgia, you got
Oh,
something
no,
really
I'm
quick.
sorry.
And I was going to say, it is interesting when you get into sci-fi and you start going down. I think it's anything. If you get too far away, you'll pull people out of the story, and they'll go, hold on, that doesn't make sense. Even
Like, how much of the world building do you
but
have to add in?
But I also think, like any expert topic, if I wrote in my story about coffee roasting and I was off, I didn't consult Nick over here, and he reads the book, he would get pulled out if I make some reference about that or something in the story. And I think that's always, writers have to be careful, not just science, but in any topic. If I'm talking about a nonprofit organization and this is what we're going to do, I should talk to Ben or Georgia here, who have dealt with nonprofits or organizations, to make sure that I'm not just saying something totally, because if you read it, you'll get pulled out of that story and go, hold on, that's not, let me look that up on Google. And if it's wrong, you go, forget this story. If that's,
I think,
it's interesting. So people out there listening who write,
that's actually exactly what I was going to ask you, Joe. Like, how important is it to get the science right?
See, but I don't know. Like, all right, so using that as an example of, you have a coffee roaster stuff and you didn't consult.
Right.
But I feel like that's such a small percentage of people.
Right.
Like
You'll be surprised how many folks will go back and go, I think that's wrong. I think it's gonna be small. Like,
a lot of that stuff it isn't science. Like I have all my notes and stuff, but there's so much human error, and each person is going to be doing it differently, that you can make an argument for damn near anything to be able to write it down.
Yeah.
Not just saying like on an argument basis, you can be like, all right, I think this is exactly how I do it. I have it at a low temp and I drop it all the way up, or bring it all the way up, not drop it.
Yeah. See, you were already, but I think, but also just saying that, you have to have a little domain knowledge about it, because if you don't, then you
I
get
guess
off.
it depends. I think it depends on how central it is to the story. If it's, you know what I'm saying? But
yeah, in terms of like science stuff, pet peeve of some shows, they get in the lab and they get like DNA results in 10 minutes or whatever, and they solve the whole case. That I go, no, you've never worked in a lab, obviously. You didn't consult someone who works in a lab. I understand TV time and all that, but it also just gives this air of, did they actually consult somebody? Did they just make this up? And I think that can pull you out of a story. That's the only thing to be cautious of. That will it pull you out? Because if you're writing a sci-fi story, the people reading it are probably into sci-fi. And they've read, as Ben said, you read a ton of sci-fi. So, either A, you did it wrong, or the other 10 authors who wrote about this did it wrong. Because none of these are original.
But I'm like, you've referenced Twilight Zone, Asimov, Black Mirror. Those are all, so on some level you've got, it's like prep work. Yeah, I think it's prep. But you're also drawing on something which is funny. Not funny, it's just interesting. Like, it's a craft tip, and you all touched on it. And I get to talk to a lot of authors. I'm sure you do too. And I also get to coach people. And one thing I would say is, if you think the person's going to get stuck, or I'm telling you I feel stuck here and distracted, if you can't fix it, you got to get rid of it. And so with science fiction or this kind of anything sci-fi, the risk is higher. But to me, it applies to almost anything. If there's something that someone's going to get stuck on because they don't believe or agree with how you explained it, like that TV show, that's something that has to be fixed. And it seems like a minor comment when people are trying to get novels published and get things written, but it's not minor. To lose people over something small, like when someone says to me, I'm really sorry, I read the draft and that paragraph on page 12, I can't get through it. I really enjoy the book so far. Then I need to go fix that paragraph. It may only be one person, but if I don't have that many readers, so I can't risk losing even one. If that person is the sample size of anything, then, I've made a mistake. I've worked with authors. It's like the flip side of this, but it's still interesting. They say something they don't realize is provocative in some way. And then I'll say to them as a coach or as a consultant, do you want to keep that in? And they'll say, why? And I'll say, do you understand how that reads? They'll say no. Right. And I'll say, so it's an important point, but you either need to go deeper or get rid of it, because leaving it like all someone's going to be thinking about for the next 20 pages.
They're going to call you out on it. Like John Lithgow recently saying, I didn't know it'd be any big deal that I'm going to be.
Oh my God. I literally texted back to my son, this is very upsetting. He sent me the clip. I just thought, come on, man.
Oh, isn't he going to be Harry Potter?
He's going to be Dumbledore. And he was I didn't know why would anyone have a problem with
I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that Pedro Pascal might be in it too.
No, that can't be true.
That seems impossible.
He was already talking shit about J.K. Rowling's too.
No.
He's probably looking for work again. No spoiler alert.
No, he.
I heard he's going to be the Potter's father.
Oh, really?
Nick, we need to do some verifying here, because
I was going to say I need a fact checker.
I don't know.
Put that in the show notes. We gotta. He's
been very vocal about his opinion. Anyway, we could go on.
Looking at that, I like to explore early examples, and I found too, which is interesting, about this kind of human replacement, and because I thought that was just an intro, and we went down that path. But one was in Greek myth. Pygmalion, sculptor, disillusioned with real women, sculpts another version. And the Pygmalion is a Shaw's play, and you have that, but that's 8 CE, also very early on. And the other one I had was the Golem in Jewish folklore. And that you have this kind of replacement of the humanoid and replacing the human equivalent and taking over function. So that was 16th century, like Prague-esque in that time frame. These stories of human replacement, we think about technology and cloning and robots and all this stuff we're bringing up, but really we've been struggling with almost a fragile sense of the human condition and our place in the natural world and our mortality that brought that up, because you can extrapolate out that if you can start cloning yourself, the ultimate goal, when you think about it, is that as I get closer to death, can I clone myself and then re-up, get a redo, and have all of my base memories? And that's the show.
And it's interesting because maybe... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was going to say...
I got excited about that.
Yeah, no, I was just going to bring up the show where we started watching the animated one, Pantheon.
Yeah.
How is that?
It's really good. Really good. And we started watching it.
And don't talk too much about that, because that's going to lead into a different episode, remember?
Oh, sorry. What is there?
Is it?
Never mind. I don't know.
Remember we talked about the idea for another one.
Okay.
And actually,
I will not allow you, if I can help it, for you to ruin future episodes. But I will say, I keep talking about like prep work, or I grew up immersed in the golem. My dad talked about the golem all the time. Yeah. So even if I didn't know exactly what's underlying that, Joe, to your point, I know what the point is, which is building new versions of ourselves, building replacement versions. Then I got to say, for a moment, when you said you did research also, I thought, is he going to name drop the movie Weird Science? Because that would be a magic.
Weird Science, you're right. That is.
And we know how accurate Weird Science was. That had the science down to a T.
Weird Science. If you're going to clone people out of a Barbie doll, a bra, and some underwear on your head, that's the way to go, man.
That was
for them. And,
so I did have, I went way back, but early sci-fi, probably the first... People all agree at some level that the first sci-fi kind of story was Frankenstein. And so...
Is that sci-fi or is it horror?
It's usually considered sci-fi.
I think both.
I mean, I
do think it's both, but I think it's the science because you're reanimating.
It wouldn't be the first horror. So I think this is considered the first sci-fi. So let's say that. So in there, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I was joking about Weird Science, but I was wondering if you were going to mention Frankenstein because, of course,
there it is.
You're building. I mean, it's a monster.
You're welcome to steal my thunder. Usually,
no, I'm thrilled. I actually was.
That was 1818. You got something older. Usually, Nick has something, but usually I try to find it first.
I was tracking where your brain was going.
I have a list of kind of this historical list of kind of stories that have human replacements. I pride myself on.
I think it is really fascinating because I don't know. Anyway, someone else say something because I've lost my thought.
I can say that.
Well, I'll go with Erwin by Samuel Butler, and that was 1872. And the whole theme there was that machines might evolve and surpass humans. So that's how long ago we've been thinking about a machine replacing us there. And society
updated in the Terminator, right?
They ban the machines. So we at this point in time, we kind of have the Industrial Revolution working its way. And you then go, let's just ban machines. That way they'll never replace us. They'll never overtake us. So go back in time, and us, unlike the Terminator who goes back and tries to stop John Connor from being conceived. What if the humans went back and I said, you know what? Let's just forget all these machines. It causes all the trouble. And so you would have this whole thing. So no, I thought that's an early example of machines. If we think about these stories being relatively new, and really the minute machines seem to replace humans, and my list of stories to talk about was John Henry and our struggle against the machine. I do.
And I think it's just so important to look at how science fiction can help us in science. You know what I'm saying? Like we bring up these things through science fiction and different possibilities that maybe we haven't thought about in our everyday life. Do you know what I'm saying? Right. I do think it's important to look at these things in that sense.
Yeah, no, yes.
And I always would thought Jetsons and having the robots and stuff would help you.
I don't care enough about robots anymore. I want to fly in cars if we're talking about the Jetsons.
Oh, I know. The Jetsons is a bummer because everything they predicted, if you're around my age anyway.
That's right, yeah.
That's 40, 50 years ago. We got none of it.
I know.
We're probably, they're talking about domestic robots now.
Doing the dishes or
the domestic
doing the
robots
stuff
are
that
coming,
you don't want to do.
That's my whole
or
point.
Like
we're here
easier.
doing AI and all that, and it's like,
we're still in the fun jobs.
Why do they gotta write art and why do they do taxes and dishes and laundry? That's what I want the machine to do. That I don't have time to actually work on my stories and stuff. Yeah, no, they don't. Yeah.
No.
They know nothing about the human condition except what we teach them, and that's.
And the people that are teaching them are.
But Joe, to your point, I'm not going to elevate Orphans above its primarily pedestrian level on that continuum, but what's fascinating is just how long the continuum is of people thinking about what does it mean to build replacements? Yes. What does it mean to be replaced? Even when you don't even have a sense of technology, going back to Pygmalion, you still have this idea that we can be replaced. And for me, but I think you're also touching on this, to go sort of full circle, how often it not only intersects with domestic life, but it intersects with capitalism in the sense that on the good side, hey, I can do my taxes so I can write. That's a positive if we could figure that out. But so often it's really abused and leveraged so that most of us are not going to get to do the work we want to do or live the lives we'd like 100%. To live. And so I think that's it. Always one of the other inspirations for this book, which is very not sci-fi, is Bartleby the Scrivener. And I don't know if you all know that by Melville. And when I read that book in college, I don't know, it's a story, but it's about a guy who decides not to work. The real question of what's any worker's obligation to the boss. The first time I read it, I remember thinking, there's no debate here. Person got a job, they applied for a job, they got hired. The professor at the time was like, why do we assume you're just supposed to do whatever you're told to do, even when you've been hired for a job? But I don't think I'd ever conceived that there was another side to that equation. To me, the other side was when you just don't take that job, or you don't stay on that job, or you find another job, or you suffer. And I still don't think I understand fully in my own head where that fits, but it also fits on this continuum of things we're talking about, which is what are any of our obligations, and what are our obligations to work and bosses and the larger corporations we all feed into. And I'll always be fascinated by that.
On that line, the maybe, because it always leads to dystopia, but it does have a contrarian kind of view. And I had some points here. I thought of maybe pluses, and on to this point, Ben, work has historically been a source of trauma. For the most part, you can go exploitation, alienation, soul sucking, death. It's just all these things we hear. So in some ways, would we mourn its collapse? Would we actually embrace forced leisure? Would that bring us some sort of psychological comfort?
Did you say forced leisure?
That's right, yeah, because all these stories, it's
you better
usually
start having some leisure there.
Like I would go back to John Henry. I brought that up because he actually is struggling against the machine, saying that humans shouldn't be replaced and humans can do a better job than the machine. And he worked harder.
And he worked
some
himself
stories,
to death.
You're right. In some versions of the legend, he killed himself defeating the machine. So when I say forced leisure, is it something about the human condition, the human experience that we fall into, as Ben was saying, we fall into line that work is part of our human condition.
But there's so many different things that you have to tease apart in that. Because if you're working, let's say you're working at a fast food place and you're barely surviving, that's different work than I'm a brain surgeon and I'm making this big difference in the world. Like, how much purpose are you getting out of your work?
With the person at the fast food place who now you say, okay, you're forced into leisure, they might be more accepting of it. So you're saying they'd be more accepting of the leisure than the brain surgeon that goes, oh, the machine can do it now. So now I can go off and play golf all night. Would they not also enjoy
exercise more with art? If you have the leisure, you're more accepting to do the stuff that you didn't think you would. That's when great things could be written, great paintings can be painted, video games can be made.
Or there's a counter argument that because you're now not suffering, you won't have the inspiration. You won't be like Ben.
But there's other things to suffer about.
With
Yeah,
Ben,
don't
You
worry.
get the
There'll
love
be
life
plenty-
of suffering. You get
There's
There's
your
plenty of
sunburn from the
suffering.
golf course. You know what? I was
But, so I'm saying, like, how much of your identity is in that work?
right. Yeah,
It's like the people that finally
right.
they
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
retire,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
they go, "Wait, I don't really want to do anything else."
There's so many other things I try.
And that's not how I would feel. I would be very
No,
happy.
Hell, I can just sit
it's a
around here and
thought that
chat
if
with you guys all
If
day.
all of a sudden this is the case, do you embrace it? Do you? At forced leisure, I think, because here, example, if you'd have brain surgeon, you're going to be forced into leisure, even though you might enjoy your profession, right? So we're talking about the people that might not like
But it's
scraping
also
grease off the bottom of the fry pan, but
it's also totally tied
know.
to capitalism and money.
right, that's
and,
right, yep.
So there's so many different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hell, I can't think of a job I've done that can't be replaced by like a computer or robot. It's like everything I've
Right.
done,
I mean-
I know can.
So if to your point, Nick, if the machine or clones or whatever are better at the job than us humans, should we just let them replace us? Why are we stopping them? Right? Or is that
Well, part
I
of
think
it.
Ben has some comment. I think I saw you made a face. We don't have video yet, but
It made me smile. The question, right, becomes if they're better, if we can let them replace us, if they ought to replace us. It's interesting because you've taken the sort of positive tack on this, Joe. But of course, there's some universe everyone's like, I guess we don't need you at all.
well,
Exactly.
You don't get forced leisure either.
Ben, we
because-
need the base material, right? Because
Yes. But it's an interesting thing, and maybe it's particularly American society, which I think it is. When you talk about forced leisure, I was just reading some article. People love to always talk about the European countries, France in particular, how much the focus is on, yes, work hard, but don't work like they do in America. Like, we're just not going to do that.
That's right.
But what's interesting to me is that this is a country where work is so completely valued. And as Georgia was talking and overvalued, arguably, I was thinking too, whatever you do, whatever you aspire to Nick's point, if you could be replaced on everything, I don't know. But it's also an interesting discussion to me about opportunity. Certainly the character in this book feels that his opportunities are limited. And you talked about trauma, Joe, you referred to it during this conversation. I also see the characters, the protagonists in the story, as growing up rough and without lacking certain fundamental things, certain support. And so they're hustling. And that's another thing, right? When you're hustling, you're that much more desperate to not be hustling. And I thought if I could capture some of that vibe, they found each other, they're holding on, they have a kid. Like, it's not that they're not without hope, but they're absolutely without the possibility that they're going to be able to easily take care of themselves, or maybe even take care of themselves at all. And that, I thought, is fascinating. The universe of forced leisure, which, by the way, I'm totally picturing the Black Mirror episode the three of you have to write. I find that really fascinating. A lot of people couldn't do it.
Yeah,
They wouldn't.
that's right.
They wouldn't know what to do. We haven't been
Right.
conditioned by society to embrace it. It reminds me of that Twilight Zone, where the guy's a bank robber and he gets shot, and then he's clearly
Georgia?
dead.
Our resident Twilight Zone expert.
She
You
didn't
know
even
this
bring it
episode,
up.
Georgia? So he goes. He turns out he's dead.
I think you're
and-
the first guest to point out a Twilight Zone episode.
Oh my God!
Before
I am
Georgia.
obsessed.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think,
should
before
say,
Georgia.
This
I
is-
went to
this
the
what-
same high school much later. Rod Serling went to my high school, so
Wow.
I feel a level of
Yeah,
ownership,
look at that
or
child.
at
Wow,
least a
that's
relationship.
awesome.
There's this episode where the
Is it-
guy gets shot, and he
Is it set like in Old West time? Or
No.
No.
So this feels like it's in the 50s, but the
Okay.
catch is he's dead and everything is gold. Like he wants whatever he wants, he's getting. And he's like, how did I end up in heaven? This is crazy. I'm this bank robber, horrific, whatever guy. And then he says he has a guide or a guardian angel. And he says to the guardian angel, look, man, like this is all too easy. Everything's fun. Everything's cool. Everything's leisure. I win every hand of blackjack. All the money's coming my way. I got to get a little action. He goes, I want to go rob something. And the guardian angel's like, perfect. I'll set that up for you. So when are you going to get there? And do you need a gun? And what should the police do? And the guy's like, no, I don't want it staged, man. This is a nightmare. And then
Right.
finally, the guardian angel says, that's how it works here. And then he says, you know what? If that's how it works here, then I prefer to go to hell. And then the angel's like, where do you think you are? This is hell. This is your version of hell. There's no excitement.
So just a quick look up, a nice place to visit.
Hell.
Yes, that sounds
That's
correct.
That's it.
Oh,
And
I thought you were saying
Nice place to visit. Yeah, no, that's the episode there. Use the Google machines while Ben
There
was
you
explaining
go.
the
So yeah, I
description,
can make Twilight Zone references
Here it
endlessly.
is.
My brother and I, not only do my brother and I watch every episode,
I've seen that. I looked at the little picture of the episode, and
It's ringing bells.
I do remember this one. Yeah.
So, Georgia, when are you guys going to start your Twilight Zone recap podcast?
Yeah, we gotta get
I
Ben
love
on now.
I will come back and be happy to stupidly talk about every episode.
I have said that we should do an episode just on the Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
I think that's just a whole new show.
That's true.
Okay.
But honestly, like, I absolutely loved when the pandemic had us closed down. Everything was at a halt. I was thriving. It was great. Despite everything else around in the world, having that time of leisure,
right.
like not being able to experience like an actual vacation before that, I loved it. It was,
Yeah.
it's like having that forced leisure. I think that would be the closest thing
That's a great example of
we've
that.
had
Right.
to that. Yeah, you weren't able to do absolutely everything you wanted to, but you had that time off to do stuff.
Yeah. No, I think you could put a positive spin on it, but I
Joe,
think
would you be able to
ultimately-
deal with that? Like a forced leisure?
Yeah, I have a million hobbies.
Oh, yeah, you do. I
would-
forgot about that.
probably, the limitation would be: are the supplies I need free, or do I need to keep working for the right?
See,
but I
that
have-
it always goes
right.
back
But
to
I mean,
the
right?
money.
If you have if you're saying money is of no object,
think
which then you hit the
when
forced
you're
leisure.
talking about like science fiction and like
Yes.
just totally going out,
Right.
that is science fiction. A world where you don't need money.
Yeah,
It's
we touched
something-
we
I
touched on
can't
that in
even-
the
I
economics
can't.
episode. We had this in that episode, and we talked about the economics of Star Trek because that was the idea. It was a post-scarcity kind of economic kind of model, which our guest on that episode, Amran, said that was
He had a lot
a
of.
lot of hand waving.
That was that was a show that pulled him out. He was like, "Nope, I can't deal with this."
Yeah, so you're right, because you get to that point where then the economics, and we talked about on there about usually economics is boring and you spice it up. But it was interesting because you get into that if you take away these things, like what's the friction in society? What's this economic friction? What is the movement of goods and things like that? Because at the end of the day, humans do that. That's what we do. And time in and time out through our history, we found a way to make things commodities and some way to trade and exchange these things. That could be goods, that could be products. And I think we would enjoy our forced leisure, and then we would kill all the robots and clones, and that would start some sort of war between the clones and the robots. And then we get into a Terminator situation or Matrix, and it's just what? And maybe that's how the Matrix started. Maybe it was like forcefully, hey, you guys can just leisurely do what you do. And then the humans were like, no, we actually don't want that. And then the machine said, we don't need you. We'll use it as batteries.
So would
which
you
is
call that a
not good.
broken future?
I would call that a very broken future. Yeah, that's as broken as the future can get. Where the stupid machines use us as batteries because we're a poor energy source. Nonetheless, that's a different rabbit hole. But
Wait, you're saying I'm not a good energy source?
you're not.
Damn.
No, you're pretty wasteful.
Thanks, Joe. Now my trauma's hitting
Maybe
in.
that remains unproven in the best way.
That's right. No, but yeah, because we're going to kind of come to the end here, but you do have this thing, and I just last point in the story is that trauma between being useful, obsolescence, and poverty, like which is worse, right? That you're now replaced in some society. So we could take Ben's story here, and the clone can replace the human completely, or the machine can replace the human. So you go from this poverty situation and desperate to now being replaced. So the trauma and all that amplifies. Can you edit out the human trauma, right? Can you create the clone and teach them to enjoy their forced leisure and they get rid of the human. The next point, and that's.
And also, there's also a Ray Bradbury episode. Remember the one where he made a clone, and then his wife fell in love with the clone, and they put him in a box or something.
Was that Ray Bradbury, or was that?
Yeah, it was a Ray Bradbury.
Maybe you're right. Yeah.
Oh, I remember that episode.
In the basement.
So guys,
go ahead, Ben.
I may be wrong about this, but of course, you're talking about Twilight Zone again.
It was actually Ray Bradbury's Presents or whatever his series.
Oh, okay,
Do
sorry.
we have one that presents?
I was thinking about a particular Twilight Zone where this guy, this very slumpy guy.
I don't know. Go for it.
Oh, okay.
We're just
sorry.
giving Georgia a hard time because she usually brings up all Twilight Zone. So Ben, you're like stealing the thunder here.
No,
Sorry,
Go for it.
I
Go
want to
for it.
steal
Go
any
for
thunder.
it.
But there's this
You're
great
a guest.
episode.
You can steal
where
as much thunder as you like as a
Right.
guest.
this like very schlubby dude. His wife goes away to, I don't know what we call them anymore. She goes away to lose weight. And while she's away, he buys a robot. Not quite a blow up doll or a sex doll, but like a robot. And she's young and attractive. And he gets to spend this like week or two with her. And he's got someone young who's fun to look at, but also waits on him and treats him like he's a hero. And he's not used to any of this. And then he starts thinking, do I even need my wife to come back? So this picks up this whole thread tonight. And you're like, do I even need her to come back? And then she comes back. And she's, again, this feels so antiquated now, I apologize, but she comes back and she's lost all this weight, or we don't see her. Maybe we see her before him. She's really attractive, and he's, oh, maybe I overthought this. The robot thing is great, but look at my wife now. Now I appreciate her. So then he starts getting into some weird exchange with her. He's, I was going to replace you, but now I don't need to. And then she's, you're going to replace me. And then she reaches behind his neck and she turns off his switch. He had once been a young, attractive robot. And he had grown into this slovenly, middle-aged dude robot. And she replaces him, and then she pulls a younger robot out of a box. And now she's going to live her best life. She was always the only human in the mix.
that is awesome. And I can't say I even recall that episode.
Well,
Georgia.
I know it's crazy.
It's Ray Bradbury, Marionette Inc.
Which one?
Marionette
The
Inc.
one that you
It's
know.
Ray
The one
Bradbury.
I
Yeah,
was
you're talking about. It's from Illustrated Man, Marionettes Inc. And that was that one. And that was a story where they get clone, and then the wife has it, and then it's on if he has the wife, the clone's more affectionate, and then he wants to he realizes that the clone is falling in love because the wife never gets him to do what he wants to do. So he gets the clone to do all the stuff the wife wants to do. And then he realizes that the clone is falling in love with his wife, not doing the job. And
I'm pretty sure
then
this
he
was a
has to-
Futurama episode too.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's right.
The amount of times that it's you can just
then
build
he
up
gets locked
this.
in the box, like the clone they struggle, and then he gets locked in the box in the basement, and then it's that's you don't really know, they're in the bedroom and you think it's the clone kissing the wife, but you're unsure who actually got locked in the box. So it's that little double take.
I'm actually, I gotta find out, but I have to find out what the episode is that he's talking about for Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah, no, we'll have to look that up.
I gotta do some more Twilight Zone research.
You gotta have that for the mini episode that we do.
And you're gonna find out later I completely made it up, and I somehow combined, Ray Bradbury with weird science with my own book.
And it was
I love
awesome.
the weird science reference. Wow, that's a good one.
Sorry, one of my longtime obsessions.
I haven't seen that movie in a minute.
I haven't either. No,
So
I think
have to say, this episode.
I'm guessing it hasn't aged very well.
No, I think I watched it a
Inappropriate.
little bit. Yes, it was. Yeah, I doubt it aged. Any of those movies in that time frame, probably not. No.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Maybe not unfortunately. Only unfortunate that we grew up.
That's
At least I grew up watching them.
I grew up watching it too.
Caused
Yeah.
all kinds of long-term damage.
I remember going to the theater to see Weird Science. So yeah, that's
Oh.
yeah, that's done.
And Nick's like, gosh,
Ben's
you
like,
guys
I'm not
are
that old. No, I don't know. I think we're around the same
No,
age, Ben.
we are. I might be a little older. But if I didn't see it in the theater, that's only because I was seeing some other
Yeah, that's right.
craptastic 80s.
You had to
movie.
see Mannequin, Weird Science. There was a whole generation of those movies. If people don't know what we're talking about, proceed with caution.
Apologies, anyone who was born after the 70s and possibly the 80s.
Cool. What were you saying, Georgia?
No, I was just going to say, actually, this episode, it really wasn't quite as depressing as I thought it might.
No,
be.
we made this future of clones and robots replacing humans very fun.
Yeah, I'm down for it.
Yeah.
It can be fun.
The forced leisure.
And forced leisure.
Sign me up.
I just have a feeling that the company is going to end up killing me as soon as they replace me.
Well,
That would be the
when
company.
it shakes out, Nick is going to be very happy, and Joe, you're going to expect to be killed, and that's going to be that's where things are going to land. George is going to be fine. The rest of
I'll
us.
be watching Twilight Zone in my.
Forced
There you
Leisure
go.
Inc. I think there it is. That's the title of the story. Forced Leisure Inc.
I love it.
I think we're
Ben, what plugs you got?
yeah. Let's go. You got a new book coming out, or it has come out
I do.
by the time this
So
drops?
May 6th, no,
Yeah,
soon.
yep.
May 6th, this new book, After Hours, Scorsese, Grief and the Grammar of Cinema drops. It's,
Nice.
again, it's a partially a grief memoir, partially film commentary. I'm not going to call it film criticism again, but it's really a deep dive into into the movie After Hours and how I connect it to my father in particular, who died fairly young, but both my parents, their love of Scorsese, but trying to use the movie as a lens to think about both grief, but also how we become creative people. So my father was an artist, fine artist, and he never quite got the success he wanted, though he was acclaimed. We loved him, and he's a wonderful artist. This whole idea of how did he get in his own way, but also when you don't get to live a full life, who knows what opportunities are lost. And so I thought if I could somehow write a book about all that, that would be cool. And I threw all kinds of things in. Joe, I didn't even know you yet. There's lists and there's interviews. I interviewed
Gotta
different
have
people. And it's funny to do a whole callback and pull our episode together here. One of the first interviews I did for the book, it was with an author, actually also at the Chicago Writers Association conference. Let's just write. Jeremy T. Wilson is a good friend of mine. And he said, this is a Frankenstein of a book. And I thought, okay, there it is. That's going to be the theme, apparently. And so you all brought that back. I appreciate it. Apparently, I'm dabbling in Frankensteinism, if that's a thing. But yeah, the book's coming out. I'm excited when anything comes out. I'm excited when anyone says, oh, yeah, we'd love to publish this. That always feels like a small miracle, right?
Yes.
Quick question. Do you have any pictures of your father's art in your book or no?
Not in this book. That's an awesome question. No, because it just didn't shake out like that. So now, of course, when I get it reissued down the road, we'll have to incorporate some Mike Tanzer art. Yeah, now that's seeming like a big problem. So not necessarily. Though it was funny, I have this fantasy where I'm going to do a podcast where I'm going to interview my brother and my mom, both of whom I interviewed for the book, and that we'll talk about the influence of movies on the family, but I'll record it. And so we did a test run. It wasn't intended as a test run, but we had some technical difficulties. But there was a moment where I was looking at them on Zoom and looking at my own reflection, and all three of us had artwork of my father's behind us. And that was not planned.
Wow.
We're in three
cool.
different homes, and we each had something over our shoulders. So
That's
I thought,
awesome.
okay,
Yeah.
can't escape the shadow, don't want to escape the
Right,
shadow, and definitely can't escape the work, which is great.
So that makes me think of my other question. What is your podcast?
So I do a podcast called This Podcast Will Change Your Life. And it is long. It has become, it was always intended, but I don't think I had any of this language. It's long form interviews with authors. So certainly I hope you all will come on and join me. But yeah, just talk to different authors. What I'm proud of lately, I hadn't really noticed it until my previous book came out and it started coming up, but the show is now in its 16th year.
Wow.
And so
Congratulations.
it's got some
Congratulations.
longevity. So
Some longevity?
That doesn't sound right.
Longevity.
that doesn't sound right. Longevity.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
You know what's great about that? I could tell, I could see the word in my brain, but I could not get my phonetics.
That's like the microwavy.
I immediately thought, yeah, this is a word. I'm just not that bright. I get this.
No, but
I used a word in a different interview recently, and as soon as I said it, I thought that's not a word. Then I got really embarrassed because I was speaking to someone much more erudite than me. Again, I grew up in upstate New York in the 70s, so my public school education is a little shaky. And I paused and I went, I apologize. There's no way that's a word. Another person said, that's okay. You're on a podcast. You can make up any words you want.
Any word you want.
I was going to say I like that
That's
word
awesome,
too. And I think
Feel free to use it. You don't even have to reference me. It'd probably be more embarrassing if you reference.
You should reference. No.
Then people will know how dumb your guests are, and let's not add to that.
That is not
or at least
true.
how
No,
dumb
you're
guest
a
is.
fabulous guest, and I definitely, I'd speak for myself and maybe to my other co-hosts. Love to be on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Talk about
Let's make it happen.
Art
I like
writing,
that. The
so,
other thing I do is that I love talking to authors, especially as they have new things coming out, not required. But then I also like to filter in just getting podcasters on and talking about why they do what they do. Like, I know what I do. I know why I do what I do. Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe get the three of you on simultaneously. That would be a blast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we reverse engineer this?
Whenever you want.
Whenever you want. We can
this summer.
engineer.
How about let's just commit to it? This summer, we'll make this happen.
You've heard it here first on the Rabbit Hole of Research. We're going to all appear on Ben's podcast titled
Podcast
This
Will Change Your
Podcast
Life.
Will Change Your Life.
I thought you already forgot.
Especially the episode we're on. It's really going to change
We
things.
won't be talking about broken futures, trauma, and the human condition. But,
I thought we were going to dive into the trauma. We didn't get to dive into the trauma enough.
It's going to have to be trauma focused for sure.
Right.
But then we'll find other things like forced leisure to discuss.
Yeah.
Are you pro forced leisure or against forced leisure before we leave?
As soon as you add the phrase forced leisure, I'm in whatever it is, whether it's forced, unforced, offered. Again, as long as it's not some larger nefarious plot to replace all of us, if it's really just an option to be, I could handle leisure. My wife always jokes about this, given especially how much I work. She's always, oh my God, nobody was born for leisure more than you. You'll be fine. You have so much stuff you want to do that doesn't involve going to work.
Exactly.
Yeah, you and I, we're simpatico here. I'll be fine. I will be fine.
Joe, pro or con? Forced leisure.
I'm pro forced. I don't like forced anything. I'm just leisure. I just love leisure. But yes, if you're going to force me to do stop doing what you do and do leisure, then I got things to fill my time with. And I've got country wisdom, so I'm ready for any robot apocalypse, meteorite apocalypse.
Meteorite apocalypse? Where did this one come from?
So yeah, I'm there. So yes, I'm pro forced leisure.
Georgia?
Yeah, you don't even have to ask me. And I'll say I really enjoyed COVID myself.
The problem with COVID, I was like I had a letter from the governor or whatever. I still had to go in. I forget what they call it.
Essential?
They were essential worker. Yeah, I had to go to the lab and keep microscopes up and pivotal research, and then I got sick with COVID. I didn't have a good COVID experience, but that's a different story for a different podcast. All right then. So I think
thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's been
what a blast. You guys are awesome.
And so you have me, Joe, here.
You got Nick.
We've got Nick. We've got Georgia,
and
we've got our guest Ben here who joined us.
And we went down some traumatic holes.
With
a little forced leisure thrown in.
Forced leisure on the other end. Yeah, you guys stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.
Love you.